Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Rob Chafe, Matt Amplification.
Hey everybody, it's me, Todd. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. We are thrilled to death that you're listening to our show. We've got a very special one.
Yes.
Drawing from our awesome time at NAMM and all the connections we made, we have a very, very special one today, especially for Rob. Woo-hoo. Yes, people on the line representing said special guests. Please introduce yourself.
Oh, I am Tom Anderson of Anderson Guitar Works.
I've heard of you.
And I'm Markus Spohn of Anderson Guitar Works.
Well, you've heard Rob here talk about the Anderson guitars just about on every episode, for those in the audience that have been following along since he's joined. And now we have them on the line. This was very exciting.
Yeah.
You were very popular people at NAMM, but our patience paid off, and we got you here in the studio today. So we're really glad to have you.
Thanks.
Glad to be here.
Excellent. Well, we've got, actually first, where can people go to see what Anderson Guitar Works is all about?
Probably our website is the first good stop, AndersonGuitarWorks.com. That's where you can see like our product lineup and all that kind of good stuff. And then, of course, we have a global dealer network where you can see our guitars and experience them in person. And so you can, on our website, see where those dealers are located.
Awesome. And I imagine there's a pretty healthy Instagram out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. We have like a YouTube channel. We have an Instagram page, Facebook page. I don't think we have a TikTok at this point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
And if you're in Columbus, you can just go over to Rob's house and he'll lend you a couple.
We're not going to have everybody show up at my door tomorrow.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Indeed.
Where's my Tom Anderson guitar you promised me?
Yeah. Indeed. Well, gentlemen, we are going to have a great time. We do have a couple of...
I have an announcement.
Well, we've got a couple of announcements, and then we'll motor on here. Tony, go ahead.
So normally, when I say, what do you call a guy that likes to hang around musicians?
Yes?
It's a drummer.
Okay.
But I was greatly saddened today.
I know.
The passing of Clem Burke. Who, in my book, was
awesome drummer.
An incredible drummer. He was a drummer for Blondie.
What a head of hair, too.
Yeah, and he played with our good buddy Andy Babiak in The Empty Hearts. And, I mean, all you got to do is listen to the Blondie song, Dreamin', and that tells you everything about Clem that you need to know. He was unbelievable.
Yeah.
So, R.I.P. Clem Burke.
R.I.P. Clem. Indeed. I saw that right before I came over here. I was like, oh, not that we were friends or anything, but, whenever we lose somebody who's just like, man, what a talent.
Yep.
Okay, I have an announcement because, speaking of talent, we've got a giveaway that we're going to be doing, everybody.
What are we doing?
This is a signed copy of Heartbreaker, a memoir by Mike Campbell, Tom Petty's right-hand man.
Yes.
We're aware.
Yeah. Well, for those who may not listening, Rob, you're so self-centered.
Everyone else is aware.
You'd be surprised. Honestly, I would think that too. But I run into people all the time.
I thought he was part of the Campbell Soup family.
Oh, shut it.
He is too.
Anyways, so we're going to be. This is a signed copy, by the way.
That's awesome.
How'd you get that?
I ordered it.
Oh,
So,
yes.
Are we eligible?
Clever girl.
No. This is going to go to one of our patrons, one of our supporters on
No big deal.
Patreon.
We create a fake ID.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Pay $10, whatever's be Patreon, and there we go.
You could.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Anyway, so we'll be giving that away.
That's very
sometime
cool.
this weekish.
Nice.
I think. Yeah, maybe this weekend.
Yeah.
And by the time you hear this, it will probably have been given away.
Have you read the book?
I have not. I just got it. I got my wife one because we're both really big Tom Petty fans.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Very cool.
Can she call me and
She
read
can
read me a
loan it
chapter
to
at a
you
time?
when she's done.
No, it'd be fun.
That's
She
creepy.
just call
that's
me.
creepy.
That's
Tony.
creepy.
I'm not going to do that.
Play Misty for me.
Tom. I'm assuming. Have you ever run into Mike Campbell?
Interesting you should ask. Years ago, and this goes back, this would be 74 or 5. I had a local band, I was a kid, and there was a place that we regularly played was a teen center in the San Fernando Valley. So a total a dive. And one weekend we played there, and we were opening up for another band, and they were called Tom Petty and Nitros.
Oh, wow.
So this is pre-Heartbreakers.
Wow. So that would have been right when he got there, post Mudcrutch? Is that about that time?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It would have been, I'm going to say 74, 75.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Maybe 74. I would guess. Anyway, so we opened up and we played, and the place was packed. We were a fairly popular local band. Nothing beyond that. It's still a local band, and we played, and the place was packed. And we tore our stuff down, and they set up, and this is a small place, and they had a wall of Super Beatles.
Oh, jeez.
And they came out, and Tom Petty came out in completely unintelligible and said, "Hey, that is Tom Petty and Nationals." And you're like, what? Everyone was like, he said a name of a song, and everybody was like, what? And they played, and they were incredibly loud, but they were really good. But that was my exposure to Tom Petty. So it was before they hit the big time and everything.
Yeah.
Nice.
Boy, and what a big time.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yeah.
He got kind of popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. One or two hits.
I'm very I'm looking forward to reading this because my wife and I are big fans, and honestly, even it's one of those things like she'll tear up in the car if like a specific song for any reason comes on, because it's just, music can do that to people. So
Yeah.
anyway, so very glad that he put that out there. I have tried to get him on the show, by the way. I did send out.
Keep trying.
I'm gonna keep trying because that would be.
Yeah, because doesn't he have is it the dirty knobs or the?
Yeah.
So that's a perfect tie-in with the guitar
They came
knobs.
here, and I missed it.
Way to go, Todd.
I was out of town. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guess you have to
anyhow.
live with just Dave Grohl.
Okay. Right. Anyway, so we'll be giving that away
kinda
to
says
our
it all.
patrons who support our show, which we're very grateful for. Onward and upward.
Yes.
We need to find out what's good. Yes, Rob?
No, onward and upward. I'm ready to go.
Okay.
He's ready to go.
We need
Let's
to find
do
out
this.
what's going on in our music world this week, gentlemen.
Yes.
And Tony. Why don't you go ahead and kick us off, and then we're going to check in with Tom and Marcus.
Okay.
And by the way, this is our opportunity to tell you it doesn't have to be what you do every day. So, Tom and Marcus, this is a cue for you guys. What other things are going on in your broad
Music
music
world.
world? Yes.
So
I mean, outside of this place.
Yes. And Tony's going to kick us off, so you'll get the idea. Go ahead.
So I finally had a chance to watch A Complete Unknown.
Oh, that's a great movie.
It just popped out on Hulu or Disney, one of those, Disney via Hulu, whatever. It's really well done, and Timothy Chalamet is very convincing as a young Bob Dylan, and I was really impressed that he did the vocal work and the guitar work. But who really impressed me even more?
Me.
No, you weren't in it.
That's never a thing.
Ed Norton, who played now boom, just went blank.
Hold on.
Ed Norton, who did
Yeah,
he play?
I know who Ed Norton is, but I haven't seen the movie
Yeah,
yet.
the guy with the banjo. This land is your land.
Banjos.
Yeah,
Oh, is that
not our
Guthrie?
No.
No.
No. But yeah, thank you, Pete Seeger. Thank you. Give that man a $20
Yes.
bill.
We need somebody with history. Good thing you're on the show, Tom. We appreciate that.
I thought he did.
Yeah, I'm old enough to know who he was. Yeah.
I was really impressed. I don't know how historically correct. I mean, I'm sure there
was
they
some-
took some
Like the Doors movie.
Exaggerations
Yeah. Oh,
here
yeah.
and there.
Yeah. But I tell you what, it was very entertaining, and I think for the younger folks that maybe aren't as familiar with the early days of Bob Dylan, it would be a very good primer.
Yeah.
Because so hats off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tip of the old ship.
I wonder. Has anybody heard what Bob actually thinks about this?
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh man, that was
You
such
think
a
he's
low
watched
ball.
it?
I don't know.
I
Maybe.
doubt it.
I bet he has. I bet he snuck in with a big hat on. Okay,
Most likely.
Tom, you get the gist. What's going on in your music world?
Well, let's see. I was on. My wife and I did a little several-day camping trip a couple of weeks ago, and so we were in the car for quite a while. And I downloaded some old stuff to listen to, and it was an interesting time because what we did is I downloaded some stuff from the 60s, kind of because I was thinking about protest songs.
Appropriate.
Given and not to get political, but I lived through the 60s and 70s and all the protest stuff for the Vietnam War and all that. So given the state of things now where there's so much negativity, I'm not saying one side or the other. I'm saying it's all over the place.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to avoid.
But the protesting now is protesting people that should or shouldn't be here, and tariffs it's mostly about it's hate centered. It's things that are people that are bad or things that are bad. And when I went back and we listened to stuff from the Byrds, David Crosby and Roger McGuinn and Crosby, Stills and Nash and some of that, all that stuff from that era, and what people were protesting then was a war, and they were protesting unfair treatment of farm workers. So it was a really different time in that there was, not that it was the best time ever, but it was still different in that the protesting was for positive outcomes as opposed to just meanness. And I feel like there's just so much meanness right now. So it was kind of fun to listen to that stuff. It was also remarkable how bad some guitar players were back then. Records. My wife does not play guitar, and she's not a super critic of guitar players by any means. But as we were listening to some of the stuff, she was like, "Oh my gosh, these guys are terrible guitar players." Big songs like. Have you ever listened to 8 Miles High by the Byrds?
Oh yes.
Listen to the guitar playing. It's a
little sloppy.
It's just a bit. Yeah.
But is that partly because now? Correct me if I'm wrong.
They were on copious amounts of drugs.
Well, that too, but
and there was no Pro Tools. There's no 40 million takes of everything.
But if correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that McGuinn recorded that backwards and then they flipped it and it whipped around. So he played a reverse, kind of like Hendrix did.
There are pieces of it that are like that, but there are lots of pieces that are not.
Yeah,
kind of towards the end of the song where the solo goes on and on and on, and it's pretty awful. But I love the song. It's like I have fond memories of it as a kid.
Sure.
Listening to the song and enjoying it, but hearing it now, after hearing how guitar playing has it. There's so many great players now.
Yeah.
I mean, not that there weren't some then too, but there were certainly some that maybe shouldn't have been playing the solo.
Yeah, I can dig that. Rob, how about yourself?
What about Marcus?
Well, we're going to get back to him.
Okay.
I'm spreading the love, man.
Okay, so my music week, actually, Marcus is sort of a part of this in a very small way.
Okay.
I got some new guitar racks, and I was pulling stuff out of cases. Been in cases too long, and I realized I really need to go through the stable and restring.
The stable. Oh.
Well, whatever. Adjust necks and everything. So I reached out to Marcus and got the
Lovey, get the golf cart. We're going to the guitar stable.
It's a yo, man.
So anyways, got everything back into shape and got specs from Marcus what things are supposed to be, and adjusted everything, restrung everything, cleaned everything, blah blah blah. So I've been doing that for the past week and a half, and almost done.
What gauge strings are you using these days?
Most of my stuff is down a half step, so they're 11s, 11 to
48 or
49.
Okay,
I think that's the standard 1149. I don't. Yeah.
48. 48, 49,
Tom
whatever it
says
takes.
yes. I side with him.
Yeah. And then I've only got one of mine in standard. That's 10 to 46. But yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So that's been my guitar week and something. So almost done. 2 more to go. And then we're
Awesome.
done.
That's cool. Marcus, how about yourself?
Well, first, I'm glad I kept you busy there. That's awesome to hear. Let's see. In my world, after the pandemic or during the pandemic, obviously going to live shows was not really something that I was particularly fond of. But now that everything is sort of back in good order, my daughter and I actually are going to see shows again. And so one show I bowed out of. She wanted to go and see cigarettes after sex, and I checked them out, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go to that.
I got to YouTube them now. I guess
I know. We all are.
Yeah, I did a little quality check up front, and I'm like, no, I think it's something that your mom needs to go to with you. So she did. What was a little bit more down my alley was we did go and see Dream Theater last month.
yeah.
So that was really good. And that was really fun because I've been a Dream Theater fan since probably 91, 92 or so. And so my daughter is 16 now, so she's been listening to that stuff ever since she was born, or probably in the belly even. So it was a lot of fun and a real fun experience for her to see those guys live that have been my musical heroes for a long time.
That's cool.
And then let's see, what else did we do this summer? One band that she wants to see that I could agree to see is My Chemical Romance. So we're going to see those guys in, I think it is August or July. And then I couldn't resist, and he's also one of our very dear artists. So Christopher Cross is on tour with Toto, and so I couldn't really pass that opportunity to see that combination in concert. So that's what I'm up to.
Outstanding. Marcus, I also have a 16-year-old daughter, and I'm 19 and a 20. And anyways, I got 3, but my youngest one is 16. And today was the last official day that I got to drive her to school, because we just got another car because we got 3 girls that need to get places.
Oh.
And so it was super bittersweet for me. And I said, what do you want to listen to? And she goes, I don't care. And so then I put on Rush, because she loves
nice.
Rush. So first song out of the gate, Tom Sawyer, and it ended with Spirit of the Radio. And I was like, I mean, that's a pretty good trip to school. You know what I'm saying?
You know what a better song would have been, though?
Oh, Tony, golly,
Go
what?
ahead.
I Don't Care by the Ramones.
Yes. Okay. So, anyways, neither do I, Tony.
That's harsh.
What about you, Todd?
Yes. So in mine, I had my birthday was Sunday, April 6th.
Ooh.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I wished him a happy birthday.
Yeah, he
Why
did.
didn't you
I don't know.
Don't you have
It's on the
Facebook?
calendars.
like them?
People I went
I
to
don't
school with
live
like
on Facebook.
ages ago.
I don't live on social media.
Tom
Excuse
sent me something
Yeah.
in the mail.
And Marcus, too.
Yes, he signed it too.
What?
Yeah.
So, anyways, I really love my growing vinyl collection. My vinyl stable, lovey. And I got Air.
Air.
Primeris Symptomus. I don't know how to say that in French. I got the Smiths. Queen is Dead.
Oh.
Like, that's one of the first biggies that I really sunk my teeth into. T-Rex Electric Warrior.
Nah, I can't go wrong with that.
Don't have that one. Bowie Hunky Dory. I know. I didn't have that one. I know. It's weird.
That's a good one, too.
And Specials, self-titled, unclear vinyl.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So
Not
it was
black
really
and white
fun.
vinyl?
That's a pretty big spread of kind of music.
That
pretty much
covers a wide spectrum.
Yes. Not the widest, but pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was very, very excited about that, and now I get to go listen to all that stuff.
Cast a wide net and catch many fish.
Indeed. So I got to say a special shout out to Alessandro for the T-Rex and the Bowie. All right. Well, anyways, that was that. Tony, what I didn't get?
What didn't you get?
I didn't get any more Tour Gear Designs patch cables.
Why?
Because I already have a fair amount, and my family doesn't know about that.
Do you have a stable for your Tour Gear Design patch cables?
I don't, but I'm going to ask Rob how to build one. So the
Take
best
some
thing to
wood and
do
some nails.
when you get some pedals, which I didn't get for my birthday, but if I did, I would have stitched them together with Tour Gear Designs patch cables.
Yes.
They have been fantastic to our listeners, because when you go sign up, you don't have to sign up, sorry. When you go and order them, and you hit, yes, I'm ready to purchase, you get a little area to put in a code. That code is the guitar knobs.
All lowercase,
You're
all
gonna
one word.
save 15%.
15%!
At least right now, we'll see what happens with all the nonsense going on in the world.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
that'll help cover the tariff.
Yeah. So then you get your cables, and you're going to be super happy. They're super cheap. They're super strong.
Well,
they're
not
super
cheap
effective.
is not. They're inexpensive.
Inexpensive.
They're not cheap. They're
Yeah,
quality
cheap's a bad
cables.
word.
Yes, I take that back.
You're a marketer, aren't you?
I put it back in my mouth.
Yep.
Anyways, thank you to Tour Gear Designs for sponsoring our 4 on the Floor.
Let me get a little bit of this.
1, 2, 3. 4 on the floor.
All right, Tom Anderson, whose name is on the headstock of said guitars we're talking about.
That was
That's-
convenient.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
What is your 4 on the floor?
Okay, my most recent acquisition in pedal land has turned out to be I think my favorite pedal ever.
Wow.
But I will start by saying that I'm old enough that I grew up before pedals were pedals. And all you had was a cable in front of your amp, and you had to turn your amp up all the way because that's the only way you could get it to sound good. So when I kind of resisted pedals for many, many, many years, and it wasn't in a playing situation where I really needed to have them. But then that changed probably, 15 years ago or so, and I started building pedal boards. So I have gone from large amps turned up really loud to smaller amps not turned up really loud, which put way more pressure on the pedal board, because an uninspiring amp is hard to make sound good, if it's not being played loud enough to be really inspiring. So this pedal I got is a Kingsley Harlot. So if you don't know him, Simon from Kingsley, he's up in Canada, and he makes tube pedals that run on higher voltage. They can run on 9 volts, but you need 400 milliamps to run them. Have you guys played with them?
No,
I haven't seen one of those.
Oh man,
we're pulling it up right now.
The Harlot has two 12AX7s in it, and it has your normal 3 controls, and then it has a second button that is more. It just adds the second tubes, and then there's level control for that. So the first stage of it gives me what you'd expect a great amp to sound like when it's on that edge of breakup. When it's past being dead clean, and the high end gets soft and sweet, and there's this natural compression happening, and it knocked me out when I got it. I listen to watch videos all the time, and I'm usually disappointed when I get something.
How'd you hear about this?
One of the guys that works here has been a fan of his pedals for a long time, and he actually brought one in. And I met Simon at a small guitar show out in California about 10 or 15 years ago.
Okay.
And he's a spectacular player to start with, and he makes amplifiers and pedals. He's not doing too much with amplifiers now because it's just too expensive to ship and everything. So I borrowed one of the pedals from Mike here at the shop, and it wasn't the one I would have bought, but it told me enough to take the chance to buy the one that I thought really, would be right for me. And I did, and it's just spectacular. I can plug it into a combo amp that's on 3 or 4, so it's not hit its opening up space yet, and it just sounds lovely. And so that's that pedal. I played with some friends this weekend. We got together and played, and I had that pedal on the whole time, and I never turned it off, and I never turned anything else on.
Wow.
As far as for drive, it's super dynamic in that you roll the volume down and it gets cleaned up just like an amp does. More than any pedal I've ever used. So that's a great one.
We might have to get him on the show.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna.
He's great, and he talks intelligently, but he also can talk so that he's not talking over your head if you don't understand the electronics of it. He's really good at explaining things.
Excellent. Well, that's a ringing endorsement. I think we will definitely try to make that happen.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean it's the most expensive overdrive pedal I ever bought, but I have not 1 ounce of regret.
Yeah,
I'd do it again in a second.
All right.
So next pedal.
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll stay with overdrives because until I got this pedal, I was probably a fan of Bluesbreaker style pedals, as opposed to I've never been a Tube Screamer guy. So Bluesbreaker style pedals, and I actually have a couple of those. One is one made by Mike Britt, who does a lot of Kemper profiles.
Yeah, Lone Star guitar player, right?
Yeah. We made guitars for him for a long time. So we've been pretty good friends. And he sent me out one of these pedals several years ago, and it kind of became a mainstay. And I also enjoy it because it just sounds like my guitar. It doesn't change the character so much. It just makes it sound like my amp is really working.
Yeah.
What's this called again?
He calls it his red box.
Okay.
I don't know that he has a name for it other than it's the red box.
And the maker is, one more time?
Michael Britt.
Michael Britt. Okay.
You don't know who
Yeah.
Michael Britt is, Todd?
Oh, geez. Here we go.
I love doing this to Todd because it's like half the world musicians you should know. Todd's like, I don't know. Like Michael Britt.
Yeah, and I've seen him
Isbell.
play. Yeah, I've seen him play a few times live, and he gets a great sound live. Just a great sound.
Yeah, he does.
He's a real good player, but he really has good ears. And and like I said, this pedal, it's a great blues breaker. And then recently we've become about a year ago or so, we became friends with the guys at Rev Amps. And they recently sent me a pedal or sent Markus a pedal, and it ended up with me. It's a blues breaker style pedal, and I guess the claim to fame about the pedal is whoever does the design there on their pedals doesn't particularly like blues breakers pedals. So, and Markus, I'm not speaking out of turn on this, am I?
I don't think so.
Okay. So they asked AI to design a blues breaker pedal.
This is the chat breaker. Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one. And now, to be fair, they said it didn't actually work when it was missing the in and out connections or something silly.
Well, okay.
So I don't know to what extent they had to modify the thing that gave, but it's actually a really good sounding pedal also.
All right.
In the virtual world, there are no connections.
Yeah. The one twist that it has compared to most of the other blues breaker pedals I've tried that I enjoy is that a lot of times with the blues breaker, even like the King of Tone and some of those pedals, if you have the gain down really low, it's almost impossible to get past unity gain with the master volume on those pedals. And this one has a little more oomph to it, so you can even play it with the gain down really, really low and still be able to boost your signal some. So right now I have that pedal in front of the Harlot.
Oh,
so if I want to push the Harlot just a little bit more for a little more saturation, I can use that. But like I said the other day when I was playing, I didn't actually need to use it.
That sounds like a great name for some 70s song. Push the Harlot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good one.
Okay,
It's a really good one.
Tom liked it.
And then I can only do 4, right?
Yes, sir.
Yep, you got a limit to 4.
Okay, 4. Then I'm going to skip the last overdrive that used to be my mainstay. I'll skip that one then for now. Then I like to have a reverb and a delay. And the delay right now is a Keeley Echos.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, great.
Yeah. I was using the new little Strymon Brig, the small version of the Brigadier, and I really like that one. But I play normal fun stuff with some buddies and stuff, but I also play at church, and when I play at church, I have to be more of a chameleon. So I'm using the Ecos because it is capable of having 4 presets for delay, and so I use. That's why it's on the board now instead of the Brig.
That's a great pedal.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one, and I'm a reasonably subtle delay person. I don't have 27 trails and
Yeah, right.
2 running at once and that kind of thing. And then the last pedal is a reverb, and it's the Cloudburst, the little small Strymon one.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good, medium fancied reverb.
A medium fancy. I like that. That's how I'm going to start ordering my hamburgers.
How would you
Well,
like your
you know,
burger
fancy,
done?
please.
Medium fancy.
Well, when I look at a Timeline or a Volante or whatever, I'm just like, that's too much.
I agree.
What's that company, Maris? Is that the one that
Yeah.
has
Oh, yeah,
functions after functions? And
Well,
it's like, I just want
they
reverb.
started. They
I know.
yeah.
Strymon,
So
yeah.
And we just had Surfy Bear on, too.
Yeah.
Speaking of reverbs.
yes,
That's the
indeed.
other side of the.
Yep.
Yeah.
Plug away, Tony.
Well, that's a good 4-ish, 5-ish on the floor.
I'm gonna stretch that. I would love to know what was your main overdrive for the longest time.
Hotcake.
Okay,
Oh.
that makes sense
It's
based
a
on
pedal
everything
that
else you said.
Yeah, but it's different in that it has to go in front of an amp that's already in the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was using it, I was using a divided by 13 JRT, the 915 little one, and that amp wound up is spectacular. It's probably my favorite amplifier of all time. But right now it's just too loud and bulky for what I'm doing, so I'm taking a combo amp.
What are you playing out of?
I'm either playing out of my first amplifier, which was a 62 Brown Princeton.
Ooh.
I got it brand new when I was 8 years old.
Wow.
Or
that's not fair. See, you got an amplifier. I got a wind-up Evel Knievel toy.
Yeah.
Which is also cool.
That's pretty cool.
But it isn't it isn't a proud reverb. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, my parents were really supportive of my musical endeavors.
That's cool.
So I got that for Christmas.
Yes.
Nice.
And I did not go on to be a stuntman, by the way. So
Yeah.
I don't.
No,
see
you
that
just
working.
fall a lot.
yes, I just look like one. Okay, that's great. Let's hear from Markus. What is your 4 on the floor?
First of all, I have to say I also had that Evel Knievel tool.
Right?
Even though I grew up in Germany, and there was a bunch of other stuff, but what was it like? Do you remember Masters of the Universe?
Oh, yeah.
He-Man and Skeletor?
Yeah.
All that kind of good stuff. Well, as far as pedals are concerned, I'm not really a pedal guy. And I would say the limitation there is that when I started playing electric guitar, I did not really enjoy having to stomp onto or step on multiple things to switch my amp and then switch from, let's say, a clean chorus sound over to a overdrive lead sound. And so pretty early on when I was playing, and I started when I was 12, I looked more for multi-effects pedals. And so over the years, I had many of those. Of course, they're not really all that popular anymore. I would want to say like TC Electronics had probably cornered that market for some time. And of course, you can still buy like Line 6 stuff. So recently, I used a lot of Fractal multi-effects pedals. And I only used them for the effects, not for the amp simulations. But then I got a new amp lately, and the Fractal wasn't really playing with that amp really nice. And so I did buy what I think will actually qualify as a pedal. It's an Eventide H90.
Oh, yeah. That's a fantastic pedal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just love that pedal because, it has all the great Eventide algorithms in it. And they're just like superior quality in terms of sound.
Yeah.
You can run, if you compare the H9 to the H90, you can run 2 of those algorithms either in parallel or in series. So it's pretty flexible in that way. And the best thing of it all, it's also, of course, MIDI capable. So you can also switch your amp at the same time that you switch your effects. And I would say like within the H90, let's see, just like Tom, I use reverb and delay. I use a little bit of chorus sometimes for clean sounds. And then I use what they call the weed whacker, overdrive or boost, just to push the amp a little bit harder. So those are the kind of 4 that I use there.
What kind of amp are you playing through?
I'm going back and forth between a Rev Generator 120, and then recently I got a Mesa Boogie 2C Plus, the reissue head. Our friends at Mesa were kind enough to send me one of those, and I love my Rev Generator, and the Boogie sounds spectacular too.
I love that you guys are seemingly on polar opposite.
Couldn't be more opposite.
That's really cool. That's fun.
The only thing more opposite would be if Markus had a rack full of gear.
Yeah, that would have been strange to hear. Yes,
would have been
I think. Yes.
Right.
Well, that's super cool. We've had Eventide on a couple times. They are, I think they were one of the first people that kind of opened my eyes to what a lot of us out there think. Like Eventide feels like a huge company, and I think they said at the time, at least in the pedal division, there was only 9 of them working there, but they're making these incredible things. And it's just they're really great people, and they make an incredible product. And that H9, the form factor
90?
and the usability, 90, yeah.
The big one,
The form factor and the usability of that are just through the roof. Such a great thing.
Agreed. Yeah, no, totally agree. Interestingly enough, actually, that's something, well, I don't want to say we suffer from that, but sometimes actually people call here, Anderson Guitar Works, that is, or email us and say like, oh yeah, I'd like to speak to Anderson Guitar Works headquarters, please. And we're like, well,
Let me transfer you.
There's only 20, right, exactly. I mean, there's also only 24 of us, so we're pretty small as well.
Right.
But
Do
some
you
people think
ever
that
like
we're-
just fake them out and go, hang on one second. Hello, this is Ambert Anderson Guitar Works. Like, oh, you're German too?
you start to sound a lot like our head of sales, Roy. I don't know if you ever talked to him, but he is usually responsible for those kind of things here.
That's what I would do. So it's probably a good thing that you don't have me working there.
Right. Let's see. I do have one more pedal.
Oh, yeah.
And that actually goes back to Rev amps as well. So I think I posted a picture of the Generator 120 sitting next to the 2C Plus. And so then Derek Eastwald from Rev picked it up and I think reposted it and said, like, oh, man, look at this crazy stuff going on at Anderson. You know, I wonder how those two amps would sound in stereo.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, only one way to find out, right? And so Tom had a old ABY box that I plugged this all into. And I mean, it sounded already pretty great, but it was limited in terms of, you know, you could not put the two amps in out of phase or in phase, and you could not lift the ground and stuff. So I bought a radial, I don't know what the exact serial number is, but actually, you know what, I have the box somewhere here. I bought a radial Big Shot ABY.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
Yeah.
I have one of those.
And so I plugged everything into that, and it's just glorious because you can, without any noise, you can basically A/B switch the amps. And then, of course, my favorite of all, you can, and Tom will attest to this, it's unfortunately a little loud, but you can actually, you know, there's a both button on there, which is my favorite button, probably on my entire pedal board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I would say like that's probably my second favorite pedal right now.
Cool.
I like the both button too.
Yeah.
More is better.
More, yes.
Yeah.
Well,
More's always better.
that has been really fun hearing about what gear you guys are into right now. And I know that our listeners are nodding their heads as well. Yeah, we definitely covered the spread on what side of the fence you might be on as far as gear goes. Or the type of gear you play, I should say. We need to discuss at this point why you're on the show, except just palling
Just
around
for the
with
four
us
on
and
the
having
floor
fun.
and
Yeah,
just hang out. Yeah, that was it.
So Anderson Guitar Works, Rob. Honestly, this is your baby.
Okay.
I would love for you to just take the ball and run.
I can do that. So let's start. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about kind of your early days, where you worked before you created Tom Anderson Guitar Works, and what you did in the early days of Tom Anderson Guitar Works?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, I was, playing in local bands, with dreams of being a rock star someday, but learned fairly early that probably wasn't going to happen. So I was making a living playing in clubs and whatever around the LA area, and then I'd been dating who turned into me, my wife, Catherine. And when she finished college, I didn't go to college at all. And when she finished college, we thought, hey, we should probably get married. So we considered getting married. So I thought, I should probably get a job. So I'd been doing a little bit of guitar repair work at local stores and gigging. And I'd been friends with Dave Schechter, who turned into Schechter Guitar Research back in the 70s. And one day, this sales guy came into the store I was working at, and he said, I want to show you this new product. And it was the Schechter Strat pickguard assembly, with the 3 mini switches and the 3 tap pickups and stuff. And I go, oh, I know that. That's Dave Schechter. And we talked a little bit. Anyway, they offered me a job. They had like one employee, I think, at the time. And so that was 1977. And I went to work there. And pretty much at that point, we weren't making bodies and necks yet. They were making some small hardware items and pickups. And eventually, over the next 5 years or so, between Dave and I, we tooled up the machinery to be able to make bodies and necks and then make complete guitars. So,
Okay.
So did that through. So the company grew to about 30 people, and we were making bodies and necks and all kinds of hardware. We had screw machines. I mean, we actually were making all the hardware. We weren't, just buying parts from different people.
And at that time, Schechter was still just parts, though? No full assembly?
We were making very small numbers of complete guitars. Okay. 2 guitars a week, 1 guitar a week, something like that.
Okay.
And then probably around 1980 or so, we hired 2 guys that worked at Strings and Things in Memphis. If you ever heard of that store,
Yeah.
they were huge in the 70s and in the 80s. And there were 2 guys there, Tom Stinson and Tom Keckler, who were, I mean, ridiculously great repairmen. You know, they're the ones who did the Oxblood Les Paul for Jeff Beck. They did numerous Les Paul recreations when Les Pauls weren't being made.
Cool.
And anyway, so they hired those 2 guys to come out, and because Schecter was desiring to make more guitars, still not giant production, but at least, you know, regularly make some guitars. So I was sort of the overseer of the guitar making part of Schecter, and then also I made all the tooling, and I did some of the we had a very crude CNC machine back then even, and I did some of the programming for that. And then Dave and I pretty much figured out how to make all the things that we needed to make there. But then probably by 82 or so, the company was owned by 4 people, and they like to do expensive things, and so the company suffered.
Very tactfully put.
Well, I mean, we didn't get equipment we needed, we didn't get supplies we needed, and so eventually they got into financial trouble, and they brought in some investors, and investors sent me to Japan to source getting bodies and necks made in Japan and all that kind of stuff, and it was pretty disheartening. So, and then in early '84, I think they actually fired Dave Schecter because they didn't need him for anything, which is pretty bizarre. And then by summer of '84, I just said, I can't take this anymore. And I'd still been in contact with Dave. And he said, you know, the only way you can not have this happen to you is, you know, just start your own business and don't have any investors. So we had a 2-year-old at home and a baby due in 2 months. And I went home and told my wife I quit my job. Didn't go over very big.
I bet not.
But that's what started the business, and I worked out of my house and garage for a year, and then I got a tiny shop, and a couple of years after that, I got a little bit bigger shop, and had a handful of employees and stuff, and then just 40 years later now.
And for the first few years, what, 5, 6, 7 years, you did only parts or mainly parts, or?
Yeah. I was making bodies and necks for John Suhr was at Rudy's Music Stop in New York City. So I was making the bodies and necks for the Pensa Suhr stuff, making bodies and necks for Jim Tyler, making bodies and necks for Roger Sadowski, made some for Zion guitars, and then also just sold bodies and necks to repair guys in stores who made parts casters, that kind of a thing. So it was parts, and then oddly enough, one of the guys who was one of the owners of Schecter, he got fired too, and he had formed a thing called the Collective with several big retailers in the country, and they were going to manufacturers to try to negotiate
terms,
better deals to be able to compete with stuff Guitar Center was doing back then. So he was the one. And then he opened a retail store in LA called Lab Sound, and he said, you should assemble some guitars because I could sell guitars if you would build them. So I assembled a few guitars, and he sold them out of his store. And then he started selling them to some of the other stores that were in this collective. So it was Making Music in Chicago. It was Newt Coupe in Minneapolis. And somebody in Northern California. I forget who that was. But anyway, so that's sort of 86 so the company started in 84. 86 is when I went to my first NAMM show and took a guitar, one guitar.
Wow. Yeah.
And because I'd been up all night for 3 days to build that one guitar. Yeah. And then it just grew from there.
I got a question for you. I got a couple. I'm writing questions down like crazy. So first of all, after leaving Schecter and starting your own, while you may not necessarily, I'm guessing, have had this in the forefront of your mind at some point, I have to assume it must have crossed. But what can you tell us some of the choices that you made that you were going to hold on to for your craft moving forward?
Well, I mean, my computer just blanked out. I think it was always and it didn't start out this way because I couldn't make everything in the early days. But it was always this sort of dissatisfaction with what I could buy. So I just, well, then we need to make that. So, we were making some pickups at first, but not, I didn't have hum canceling single coils. So I was using some Seymour Duncan stuff. I'd known Seymour also previous to this whole mess. He lived in Topanga Canyon, and he used to hang out at the same music store I did in Woodland Hills. He and Kathy lived in a trailer in Topanga Canyon. And I remember, sitting in that repair shop with him making, brass saddles for tellies because you couldn't buy those back then and just that kind of stuff. So anyway, so we were buying pickups, and I was not thrilled with what was available and stuff. So I just started making more stuff and then working on hardware. And I think, so it was always kind of if there's a mantra, or if there was a mantra around the shop in the early days, it was, there's nothing we can't do here. It's like, when we first started bending tops, making drop tops, it was like nobody was doing that. And we're like, well, you should be able to do that. So we did that. And we kind of continued that. And the other thing was that we always looked at what we were doing. And we'd often talk about, okay, what's the one thing we're doing that we either have to redo sometime later in the process because it wasn't exactly right, or what thing are we doing that's either difficult to do or difficult to do super consistently. And then we would work on that and figure how do we do that better. And then after we finish doing that, we go, okay, now what is the thing that is the most trouble for us? And then let's work on that. And that's been 40 years of that. We a couple times during our time, we had people that worked here move out of state and then come back again several years later. And it was very interesting. We had a guy in final assembly who was actually the first final assembler. His name was Brett Gould. And he moved to Colorado, and then that's where his family was. And he moved back after 4 years, and he was shocked. He made a list of how many things we did differently after 4 years than we used to do it, and it was a ridiculously long list. So I think it's just that, we want to do the best we can possibly do, and we want to do it consistently. I used to tell people, I kind of hated it when somebody said, hey, I played one of your guitars, and it was really great. And I was like, well, did you play any other ones? And if they said yes, I go, well, I'm kind of bummed that you thought one was really great and you didn't say anything about the other ones. I'd like to think that, we can, it's really important to me that we be consistent from guitar to guitar. And, we're dealing with wood and natural materials, so they can't all be identical, but they should all feel great. They should all sound great. There's lots of different things that are more one person's taste or another person's taste, but that doesn't mean they're better or worse. It's just they're just different. So I think we've always been after consistency. And then, like a lot of the things we do came out of not being happy, like the fret wire, the whole stainless steel fret wire thing. It's just like the people that made fret wire in the 70s and 80s, it was awful. It was completely inconsistent. It didn't seat the same. And we found a guy who was in the eyeglass business of all things, making wire for eyeglass frames and making buffing material for people like Ray-Ban to buff the frames of their glasses. And he thought, this eyeglass factory in Germany could make fret wire. I bet it would be better fret wire than what you're getting now. So we worked with him, and that's when we started getting wire that was consistent every time, that pressed in the same every time. And then also that also prompted us to say, hey, what if we got wire that lasts longer, like stainless steel? So he made the first stainless steel fret wire.
Wow.
And still does now.
Interesting.
So you guys, is that, go ahead, Rob.
Well, and
you're
chomping
your lip off.
Well, Todd's making the realization that you've innovated quite a few big firsts in the industry, including the bent top. Now, when you did the first bent top, that was you and Bob Taylor, right? That he gave you some insight on that?
I was trying to do it, and I was having trouble because the top is thick enough that it doesn't want to bend.
Yeah, it's 3/16 of. So Todd's looking at me funny. So he back in what the mid '90s, they were looking to make a Strat body shape like a Super Strat or Dinky shape, but have I think it's 3/16 of an inch thick top, Tom.
Yeah, 0.2 inches. Yeah, slightly over.
But have it bend over the neck or the forearm curve. So
Yeah.
the quilt goes over the whole thing, and
I
you
see.
can't just bend a piece of maple that thick.
Yeah.
It won't bend like that. So
And also because there's a center glue joint, you can't steam it and heat it because you'll break the glue joint.
yeah. So you and Bob gave you some insight, and you guys were the first ones to come up with the kerfing, right?
This was the early 90s, so this was probably 90, 91. And we were also at the same time working on UV finishes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the project we were working on together. And during that project, we were good friends. And so one day I just asked him, like, I have some way to bend this thing, you know? He goes, why don't you kerf it? I'm like, kerf it? Well, it's, the kerfing around the inside of an acoustic guitar is just a piece of wood with lots of slots in it. So it makes it more flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So we put slots in the back of the top and then stop the slots short of where the edge of the guitar is, so you don't see them when you're cut the outside shape.
Yeah. So Todd, there's lots of that. And was it your work at Schecter when you guys first started using the CNC in production?
Oh, that was super crude. At Schecter, we were using the CNC to make bridge saddles.
Okay.
And two pneumatic bridges and stud tail pieces,
So it's
mostly metal parts.
So it was Anderson was the first time that was used for making guitars, then wood parts.
Yeah, but that actually came from Dave Schecter, because after he was done at Schecter, he went to work for a company called Fidel, and they make CNC machines.
Oh.
And to give you just a little history about Dave doesn't think very many things in the world are made very well. He always is. I mean, cars aren't good enough for Dave. He built his own suspension for cars. I mean, it's just, he was a hot rodder.
Mm-hmm.
So he was brilliant at looking at something and seeing what could be done differently that would make it work better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has served me unbelievably well. Everything in my household and everything, I always kind of look at and think, well, how could we do this differently so that it either worked better or lasted longer, or any of the, all those kind of things. So, where was I going?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a quick question. And Rob, if you need to go back to that stuff, you mentioned your first NAMM with your single guitar. Do you recall at what point your brand just took off?
It was pretty slow and organic. I never wanted to have lots and lots of employees, so it was always, what can we squeeze out of here before we hire another person? Mm-hmm. So I would say, but the early 90s were certainly, we got pressed with Kirk Hammett playing the bowling ball finish guitars. That was a pretty big bump for us. Vivian Campbell. We had a few, pretty serious guys playing our guitars back then, and that certainly probably put us on the map. And I think, and weirdly enough, that guitar player telly shootout in the early 90s was huge for us.
Yeah, that a lot of country players started picking up stuff after that, right?
Yeah, and we had, we sent 3 guitars to that thing, and we got 1, 2, and 4 out of the
wow,
yeah,
the shootout, which was crazy. So I think that's when things started taking off. Oh, so the whole Dave Schecter connection, the machine, Dave went to work for this CNC company and he praised this machine. He never said anything was really good. So we, it's a vertical mill, has a tool changer, 21 tools. So it's an aerospace machine. It's for building airplanes, not for wood. And so I said, well, I was doing all the net carving at that point in time. We had pin routers and all the traditional kind of equipment at that point in time. And so I basically told him, I handed him a neck. I said, if you can make that machine carve the back shape of a neck, I'll buy one. And they did. And they showed me, they had an attachment that went in the machine that was like a mechanical digitizer.
Mm-hmm.
You define a grid on the part, and it would go down and touch the part and record all those points.
Wow.
So it's a very kind of crude now it's all laser scanners and stuff, but in those days it was mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, my poor wife, this was 1988, and our house payment was $550 a month. Okay. And I came home and said, we need to get this machine. The monthly payment's going to be $2,300 a month.
Oh boy!
And she served you with divorce papers and.
No, she did not. And the ridiculous, crazy thing about that whole thing is that we never felt the burden of that payment.
That's awesome.
In other words, that machine
Paid for
changed our
itself.
life so significantly that it wasn't a burden. I'd never touched a computer before that time, so I had to buy a computer and program. And at that point, I was programming manually, which meant drawing things on graph paper and doing all the trig. I mean, just to make a humbucking pickup hole could take all day. You had to calculate the trig for every edge radius and all that kind of
Jeez.
stuff. So it wasn't until a couple years later that I actually got into CAD. And that was probably because of Bob Taylor. They certainly had, much more wherewithal than we had at that point. We were 4 people, and they were a good sized company by then. So he bought Mastercam and told me all about it, and that was enough to get me to get it. And then, so when they sold this machine to us, they'd never sold a machine to a woodworker before. So they were, you're cutting steel, you're going 10 inches a minute, 20 inches a minute. And I said, I want to go 200 inches a minute. So they actually rewrote the software for the machine to accommodate a lot of the things that we wanted to do with it.
Wow.
And then that machine became the de facto guitar making machine. Taylor has 50 of them in each of their factories. Martin had them, PRS bought them. I mean, everybody, Ernie Ball. So I had visits from a lot of those guys. They came out to our shop to see this wondrous machine.
In use before they spent the money. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's we're all just sitting here just listening like
there's
little babes
like I
in
said,
front
there's
of a
a lot of
fireplace.
innovation, a lot of discovery in the history of Tom Anderson for sure.
Yeah. We have 3 of those machines now, and they do a lot of the, if it looks like it got drilled or routed, it happened on that machine.
Yeah. Did I see something that you're cutting controls now with laser?
Yes. Yeah. So
they're not routing or using the CNC to cut the controls on the guitar. They're using a.
Wow.
Yeah. So we were having, all of our pickups are made like a Fender pickup in that there's flatware that you assemble with pull pieces. You press a bobbin together. They're not actually a plastic bobbin. So we were having this flatware. We were having it at Schecter. We actually drilled it and cut the parts out on a pin router, and it's an unbelievably laborious and inaccurate way to do things. So we found a guy back east that did laser cutting, and they were cutting parts for us. And then after the first year of buying parts, we realized the amount of money we spent making those parts, we could have bought a laser. So we bought our first laser and started cutting the pickup parts out on it, which we still do. But then once you have a laser in your facility, you kind of like, what else can we do with this? So we started cutting plastic plates. And then one day I was, we were cutting 5-way switch slots on a body, on a Bridgeport mill, manually turning dials, and it's just, insane. And I said, let's put on the laser, because a laser doesn't have there's no cutting force. When you're cutting with a tool, a sharp tool, it's smacking into the wood. There's a lot of force, so you have to hold it down very well and index it very well so it doesn't move. Well, the laser doesn't have any cutting force at all. It just burns its way through. So we started cutting all the control holes in bodies after they were buffed. In other words, finished, painted, all done.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Wow.
Yeah.
Which makes a super clean hole. It actually chars the inside of the slot so it's black so it doesn't show. It's a lovely little machine. So then now we use it. We cut plates. We put our engraving on the back of the headstock for the serial number and all that stuff on it. Use it for all kinds of little jobs.
Yeah. Hey, we kind of skipped over Marcus's history here, but Marcus, tell us about how you got into this crazy world and when you came on at Anderson and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, it's all Tom's fault, of course, Yeah, I mean, I how can I put this best? I think, my life has always been a collection of lucky circumstance. Let's put it that way, maybe. So I got introduced to Tom Anderson guitars, I think it was in 2006.
Yeah.
And then I got my first one in 2007. And then between 2007 and probably 2014, at any given point, there was probably a guitar order with my name on it in this factory, because I ended up buying, I think, like, what did I have, like 18 or 19? And they do take a little while to build. And they were all custom ordered. But anyway, I was actually working a completely different career. I was a product manager in Silicon Valley. And I was down in LA for a business meeting, and it was really boring. And I'm like, I'm in Santa Monica. The Anderson factory is just right around the corner, more or less. So I'm like, screw this meeting, it's boring. Let's get a rental car. Let's go up to Newbury Park and see where my guitars are being built.
Check in on the kids.
That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah. So I showed up. I don't think actually the first time I visited, Tom wasn't here. So I talked to Roy. And of course, I had a guitar in order, right? Because it was, I think that was must have been 2008. And of course, looking at the shop, I saw a few things that I really liked. And I said to Roy, hey, can we change my finish from, I think it was the sheer finishes that just come out, which is like a tiny little bit of metal flake in the top coat.
Transparent.
So I like that very much. And I said, right. And so I said, hey, can we change my body finish to also be sheer? And he said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so he whips out his laptop, and I look at the order management system he was using. And I'm like, wow, this stuff I haven't seen since I probably programmed on an Apple IIe in high school. This is like really ancient stuff. And he said, oh, you know those kind of things? And I'm like, yeah, I work in the industry. And, I showed him a few things because I had my laptop, given that I was supposed to be in a business meeting. And I didn't really think much of it. And then I went home. And on Monday, I went back into the office. And then one of our sales guys sends me an email on Monday, Tom Anderson Guitar Works and our company. And I'm like, oh, God. What did I do now? And so it turned out that one of our sales managers was Tom's friend of, what was it, like 30 years, Tom?
Oh, yeah.
Rob Wilcox.
Yeah, our kids grew up together.
Yeah.
That's
What are the odds of that?
What are the odds of that?
Wow. So then it was like, okay, well, and I think Bob, in his, to his credit, I think he wanted to make sure that he didn't know me. And so he wanted to make sure that I'm not ripping his friend off, right? Because the software business is littered with people that just try to, pull a lot of money out of your pocket. And I said, no, quite the opposite. But it would be awesome to do something for these guys, right? Because this is probably as close as I'll ever get, combining what I do for a living and my passion, which is guitars. So over many years, or actually the first thing we did is we all met, and I remember this meeting. Laurie, I'm sure we get to talk a little bit about Laurie in a little bit, but Tom's original business partner of 28 years was still alive and around. And she wrote the implementation of the original order management and production management system. And so we all got together and we said, this would be all interesting, but so how much would you charge for this? And I said, well, I can't charge you anything for it because I already have a job, and my job pretty much says I cannot work on the side. So, but I'm happy to do this on weekends and just like pro bono work almost, if you will, right? Because I love your guitars, so I would just love doing this. And I remember and everybody was like, that doesn't sound really right. It's just like, what's this guy up to? Why, exactly, yeah. But so I think, it didn't really go anywhere, but I think I still built a little prototype. And the next time I showed it, I think there was a little bit more interest. And then over many years, I built this system literally on weekends when I had to come down here to meet with Laurie, with Tom, with Roy, to fine tune the system and to see how they build guitars. I would take vacation from my Silicon Valley job, come down here for a couple of days or 3 days and build this on the weekends. My wife was not very fond of all of this, of course, because it's like, hey, where's my husband? Oh, I'm working on the Anderson stuff. Okay. And so, then I think we finally went into production with the whole thing in, was it 2012?
12, yeah.
Yeah, I think 2012, we made it official. And then my role was really sort of, offsite, sort of freelancer. System needed a little bit of tweaking here and there, if we would make changes to the guitars or new options that needed to be set up. But yeah, I would come down here maybe 3-4 times a year just to say hi, make sure that everything is working. And then full time, that was a little bit more of a surprise. So that is, I think it's been 4 years now that I've been here full time. And yeah, that came out of left field, really. Tom and I were working on a reasonably big project together where we changed the way how our pricing for the guitars is calculated. And that ended up being quite a bit of work. And so him and I had to work pretty closely together. And at some point towards the end of the project, he would start signing emails with like, "Oh, Markus, thank you so much. You should run this place." And I'm like, "Well, okay, that's very kind of you to say." And I dismissed it in the beginning and said like, "Well, this is sort of like Tom's way of just showing gratitude." But then the emails kept coming with those kind of comments. And then at some point I decided to like ask like, "Hey, you're just trying to be nice, right? And be thankful. I'm pretty sure that the last thing you would want is a Silicon Valley dude running your business and all that means." Yeah, then we started having a discussion for that, and that's probably something better that Tom can tell you about.
Yeah, so it started with over the last, well, probably more than a few years ago, but we started talking almost 5 years ago, probably. But for a couple of years before that, I'm old enough that I have lost a handful of friends over the last 10 years, just due to getting old or cancer or whatever, just things. So I started thinking about, well, what would happen to this place? I mean, I said, someday I won't be here, whether it's because I get hit by a bus, or I get cancer, or I'm 90 years old and I can't go to work anymore, or whatever, But there will be a day when I won't be here, and this place is, and the families represented here are very dear to me, and it is. I mean, people don't leave. People come here and they don't leave. We've had several people that did leave come back. It's just, and I just, was thinking like this would be if something happens to me. So in 2017, Lori, my partner of 28 years, passed away fairly suddenly from cancer. So for several years, it was me alone kind of having to make the big decisions and stuff. And she was also doing more administrative work, so that was absolutely not my forte. So I was really missing that component. But so coming to the realization that someday I won't be here, whether it's, hopefully it's not soon, but, someday I won't. And this place needs to be able to continue. So I started thinking about the people I knew. I've known a handful of other people that have been in this business that have sold their companies to bigger companies, and not one of those things has gone well. Yeah. So that I knew that wasn't an option for me. So I started thinking about the people I knew or that I maybe needed to get to know that would be able to take over a business like this, learn its ways and learn the culture and all that stuff. And Markus's name was always the one that came up as the one. So he had been going to trade shows with us and stuff like that. So he had been, company adjacent for a number of years. It wasn't like he was just this guy that came and visited us every once in a while. He was much more than that to all of us. Everybody loved him. So we started having these email conversations, and then one day he said, "You're actually serious about this, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I really am." And then I said, and then so we talked a little bit more about it, and clearly he was making way more money in Silicon Valley than I could afford to pay him to come here. But I think he was considering a change anyway, having been in that industry for a number of years.
So you gave him a lifetime 10% discount?
It was actually 15.
That probably kind of offset.
Yeah. So we talked out all those kind of details, and then, like I said, it's almost 4 years.
Yeah.
He actually moved his family down here.
Wow.
And it's been great. I mean, I think. So when I first made the announcement to the crew, we used to once a week have these meetings where we all got together out in the shop and we just kind of talked about the state of things, and we're very transparent about our finances and everything with everybody. So we talked about stuff, and then so I started talking to the crew about, someday I won't be able to be here, and you guys matter to me, and I want you to be able to continue and all that stuff. And it turns out one of the guys was standing not too close to me, so I didn't hear him say this, but he told me later. He goes, and so I told him I found this person that I think he knows us really well, and he has the skills and the passion and all to do this. And this one of the guys, Doug, was going, "Oh, I hope it's Markus. I hope it's Markus. I hope it's Markus."
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah.
And it was, when I announced that it was Marcus's name, it was cheers. It was
That's
just like
great.
awesome. And so everyone was really happy to have him, come here. And he's an absolutely great people person. So he's really, we've expanded some things, not in a dramatic way, but we've added a few positions and stuff, and it's made opportunities for the people that are here. So it's been fabulous. And then I think the thing that I hadn't counted on, but I knew would come, was he is the fastest learner I have ever worked with. As far as when I show him, when we're working on guitars, fixing guitars or whatever, he just picks stuff up so lightning fast and retains it. I don't tell him 6 times how to do something ever. And he's intuitively, he sees what's happening before I even say what's happening. So
that's great.
That's turned out to be awesome. So he's actually, like, I've always played all the guitars before they ship, and then done whatever fine tuning might be necessary. Well, he's, for the last 3 years, he's doing that. And then I play him after he's done, and I literally seldom turn a screw.
Nice.
Because he's methodical and precise, and it's just I couldn't ask for more.
That's fantastic.
That's great.
So that's kind of how we got to where we are now.
Well, speaking of guitars, why don't we talk about guitars?
Sure. I like guitars.
Yeah, I like guitars too. Everyone here likes guitars. What your bass models initially were mostly what, S-type, T-types?
Yep.
Would you say?
Yep.
And I see you've branched into the offsets and different things like that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? And the one thing that keeps the people often ask is, what makes an Anderson guitar stand apart from any other model that, quote, looks, unquote, the same?
Well, we had a customer once. It was a guy he was in the industry. I forget what company he worked for and stuff. And he had spent a lot of time talking to me about a guitar he wanted to get and stuff, and had spec'd it all out, and we had scheduled it. It was a ways down the road still. And then we were at an amp show, and he came up to me and he goes, "So what makes your guitar better than this Korean guitar?" And I just said, I said, "Do you like the Korean guitar?" He goes, "Yeah, I really think it's great." And I said, "Then you should probably buy that guitar." I said, "If it doesn't, if you don't see and feel, a difference, then you should buy that guitar." And so he did. so I think, what makes our guitar, everything that we do. So many people try to narrow a guitar down to a particular piece of, a particular thing, whether it's the neck or the body or this wood or that wood, and a guitar is always, always, always the sum of all its parts and how it was put together. Because there was a time, like at Schecter, they wanted me to spec out pickups to be made in Japan. And I gave them every detail about how we made the pickups, but they still didn't sound good. So there are, when you're making something, whether it's a simple product or a very complex product, there are so many things you do along the way that you eventually stop even thinking about. You don't even realize you're doing them. So I think, it's that buildup of time of learning and dealing with all these little tiny things that all add up to one really good thing in the end. So I think it's paying attention to all those details that makes makes our guitars what they are.
It's one of those you've forgotten more than most people will ever know, right?
Well, I mean, but it is true. You don't even, if someone asks you to like, and it sometimes happens when someone's learning a new job, is when you're explaining what to do to them. It's often you do something, go, whoa, what'd you just do? Like, oh, I didn't even think about that, So you have to, redefine everything that you do.
Let me. I'm going to answer Tony's question for you, Tom, too, as somebody that's obviously ordered numerous and had.
How many, Rob?
I lost count of 38. So
yeah.
But I've ordered, and last one I ordered was 3-4 years ago, I think. And I know what neck I like. I know what frets or whatever. Consistency. Yeah. If you go and buy let's just say like a Fender American Professional or something, one of their higher end, $2,000 guitar. You go to a guitar store and you pick up 6 off the wall. They're all going to be slightly different neck sizes. They're all going to be vastly different weights. They're, within reason. But whereas when I order an Anderson, I know they're all going to be the same quality level, and whatever I spec is exactly what's going to show up.
Yeah,
that's
so
important.
It's a very consistent.
That's the goal. Yeah, that's the goal.
Yeah, I've got 3 guitars that have the exact. I've had, I guess, 5 or 6 I've ordered with the exact same neck specs, and they are all exactly the same. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing.
Nice.
So.
Well, my wife would say this is a hobby gone wild, and it really is. And I tell people, we're making the guitars I wished I had when I was 20 years old playing in bands.
I have a question. Who comes up with the names? Because I love it.
Todd's
and
drooling
I'm
over
absolutely drooling over the Return to Find Nothing. Black and gold is my thing, and I am literally, my mouth is watering right here.
And he's flipping through the pictures, and every time he sees one of the Ravens, he's like, whoa, that's it. So.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one because I was encouraged by Roy to do an offset. It really wasn't on my radar. I had a Jaguar way back in the day, a 60s, early 60s. It was a horrible guitar. It was,
How do you really feel about it?
Well, it was never in tune. That bridge that rocks back and forth.
Yeah, those were great.
Whatever position it was when you touched it last,
Yeah.
So that was a guitar that, I kind of sat down and started with a Jazzmaster. And when Jazzmasters always felt like a giant blob to me, like a giant bar of soap that's been in the shower too long. And it's all rounded and just blobby and too big. And so the Raven became, it got smaller and it got a little more angular and stuff. And I turned out to really like it. It was there was a few years where I just played it. I had a Raven that I played it all the time and really enjoyed it. So I think it's the stuff that's happened since the very early days, it's all been kind of looking for something a little different, while still maintaining the consistency and the variability and all the option kind of stuff that we do.
Talk about some other newer models. What brought about the icons?
That's a Strat. People, can I get 3 knobs? Can I get a top jack? And I really want the body to be just a little bit bigger, because our classic is a slightly reduced size.
Right, slightly undersized.
Strat body. Yeah. Yeah, so the icon just happened because people wanted to buy a Strat.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, what is the model that you prefer?
I'm equal opportunity. I've got a classic T, I've got an icon T, a Cobra. What else do I have? I have a Pro-Am T, and then I have a Crowdster right now. So I've had. I like the single cuts. I've had a couple classics and drop tops in the past, but I just prefer the singles. But yeah, so no, I'm equal opportunity, and that's the beautiful thing is most of these. Todd doesn't know this, but there's a few models that are only available in shorties, 24 and 3/4 inch. But most of the other ones you can get either 25 or 24 and 3/4, and you can get all the different neck sizes and fret wire and body and wood choices. There's only a few restrictions. So and I don't know if you know this or not, Todd, but there is no standard production model. Every single guitar that comes from Anderson, you have to spec out every detail on.
Right.
So it's literally every single one is a custom guitar.
Yeah, we don't build any inventory. Every guitar has been spec'd by somebody. Whether it's the end user or the store. They have to spec. They don't just say, "Give me a red classic."
Right.
I know that's like foreign to some people because when I used to, again, when I was doing retail, and we did Grosh and Sir and some other brands.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, so this is their standard model. It's like, no, we spec'd it, but they don't have. And people couldn't compute that. They said, well, what do you mean? I was like, every single guitar is a one-off.
Yeah.
So, it's foreign for some people that are used to going to Guitar Center saying this is the standard, this is the this is the,
Yeah.
Right.
So, what about, one more model question. What about the Wolfhound? Let's talk about the newest thing.
Yeah. So my first Gibson guitar when I was, 21 years old, maybe, was an early 60s SG Special.
Me and Todd were right when we picked it up at the show. Both of us were like, this feels like an SG inspired thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely was. And again, it was a spectacular sounding guitar. It changed my life. I had a Telly that I played all the time before that. It was a 68 floral pattern, blue floral, that I refinished, of course, because who wants a blue floral pattern?
Oh, man.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Just out of curiosity, what color did you refinish it?
Oh, natural, of course.
Oh, there
that was
you go.
the Woodstock era. We were all stripping our Fender guitars and making a natural finish.
It's not even like you finish it black and we could go back. It's gone.
No.
It's gone.
No. So when I got, you play a Telly for a while and then you get a P90 loaded guitar, it's like light years different.
Mm-hmm.
It was so, and this is pre pedals for gain. So this is just, a blackface Fender concert amp on 7. That's all I had to work with. So, P90s into a wound up amp is a pretty glorious thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the guitar was never in tune. And even if I almost got it in tune, it would never stay in tune. So it didn't stay with me for lots of years. I eventually got a Les Paul, with a tune-o-matic, so I could actually reasonably closely tune the guitar. But I had fond memories of that guitar. And then you guys know Tom Bukovac?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nashville session guy.
Not personally, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah. But a little over a year ago, he, on one of his episodes of his show that he does on YouTube, he bought an SG Special, and he goes, "This is the only live guitar I'm going to use." And it just kind of rekindled that memory in my head of what it sounded like, because part of the thing with an SG is it's a thin body, so it's less mass to make move. Electric guitar strings don't create as much energy as acoustic guitar strings, say. Bigger strings, you can hit them harder and they vibrate harder and they make the wood vibrate. Where electric strings are pretty wussy, so they don't create as much energy. So having a thinner body gives it less stuff to have to make it move. And then the other thing that was unique to the SG was the pickup placement. The SG Specials had the pickups much closer together, so the neck pickup wasn't as woolly. It was a little clearer, still fat, but less tubby sounding. So I started just real crudely. I took our Bobcat shape and made a thin-bodied Bobcat with mahogany body, mahogany neck, and the pickup placement the way it was, but with a tune-o-matic and stud tailpiece. And I made this just kind of crude. Everybody calls it the hippie guitar because it looks like something from the 60s that somebody played at Woodstock. And I just really enjoyed it. So that kind of led me to pursue that idea more. And I knew I didn't want to make it the same shape as any of our other guitars. But then I started really thinking about the SG and thinking, well, the thin body with the bevels is pretty cool. And then it might be kind of nice because I was playing the Ravens so much. I thought, I'm really kind of enjoying this offset thing too. So then we started fiddling around drawing shapes and, came up with what we ended up with as the Wolfhound.
Yeah.
And the name came from, I've had Irish Wolfhounds for the last 30 years, and they're my dog breed of choice.
Nice.
And so Roy was the one that I think came up with Wolfhound. He was the one that suggested Wolfhound. But it's odd because he thought Wolfhound because it's it's got the pointy horns, so kind of like fangs and stuff like that. And I go, Wolfhounds are the gentlest dogs you've ever possibly imagined. So I thought, well, that doesn't really fly, but I understand that people probably think of Wolfhounds as the hounds of the Baskerville, and being much more lethal than they really are. So anyway, that's where the name came from.
Yeah.
And then so that's all I've been playing since we made that guitar, because it just suits me well. They're super light, they're thinner, so buying wood is always a challenge. Getting lightweight wood is always a challenge, and so you make a Wolfhound out of a lightweight piece of wood, and it's a sub 6 pound guitar.
Wow.
Yeah. Are you doing anything with chambering or semi-hollow?
No, you don't have to. No, they're so thin. There's no need to.
Okay.
Tony, anybody knows that.
I knew that. I was just seeing if they knew that.
There's no maple top. There's no hollowing.
Yeah.
It's corrugated.
It's interesting because the thin body does restrict many of your options. You can't put a 5-way switch; it's too tall. It's
that's right.
Too
Yeah.
deep. You can't use a vintage trem because it's too deep. So switching became much simpler. It's a 3-way toggle switch, and we can add mini switches for splitters or series parallel, that kind of stuff.
It's simplicity on that.
For the most part, it's a simpler guitar.
Yeah, and then I think that's very fitting for the style. And again, me and Todd, when we were at the show and we picked it up immediately, both of us like, this feels like their version of an SG-ish inspired thing.
Absolutely.
So it's perfect. Yeah.
The one thing that stood out to me, and I played just about everyone that you had at your booth.
Well, the
Rob,
one that really did it was the Raven I put in your hands.
Yeah. And then Rob goes, I know that you, and this was the first experience. So before I played them all, he said, sit down and just do this, and just hit the strings, and listen. And this is in the middle of noisy NAMM.
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't stop ringing. I couldn't believe. I couldn't believe. My jaw just dropped.
Yeah, and Todd says, so what makes this one do that? I was like, they all do that. I was like, this is when you get to this level of craftsmanship.
I was
this is what
so
you get.
impressed with that. I really couldn't believe it. I think that was one of the first things I told Tony when we came back. Yeah. So got my attention. That's for sure.
Anything new in the works, up and coming, after the Wolfhound? That you can talk about?
Well, we're in the middle of. I'm doing a lot of retooling right now. We've been, like I said, doing this for 40 years, and some of the fixtures that we use are things we made 30 and 40 years ago, and we're trying to kind of rework a lot of the tooling that we use and fixturing to both, again, be more precise, since things do wear over time, and also just allow for easier changeovers, because we do so many different things that we try to design in the old days, you made a fixture to make whatever this thing you wanted to make was.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we have 8 different body shapes. So now we don't want to have 8 different fixtures that you have to set all the tools. And, so we're, working a lot on the equipment that we make things with to make it more flexible,
efficient,
and easier to set up, and more always with the end result that we want to be more consistent.
So that sounds like you're doing what you're really trying to say is you're going to do a Warlock-inspired model.
Oh, God, I hope not.
I will.
The Anderson BC Rich line, yes.
I will throw this out there that the guitar I played this weekend is a Dire Wolf.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Not a Wolfhound. So it's what will probably turn into some kind of mutation of what a Wolfhound started at. But
got it.
Well, that's got my wheels turning.
It's fun. Yeah. And then Markus can talk about another new piece of equipment that we got that is kind of our one way of kind of future-proofing, and also we've had the same guy has polished every guitar we've ever made, pretty much, and he's retiring at the end of this year.
Funny enough, there's actually also the BC Rich connection, right? Because Tino was buffing for BC Rich before he buffed here.
Oh, wow.
You're kidding me, right?
So yeah, who knows, right? I mean, that Warlock guitar.
Hey, why not?
Wow.
Come on.
I mean, What Tom is referring to, so we bought we designed, with help, of course, a robotic buffing cell, which, is somewhat uncommon for a company of our size. For context, we're trying to build 6 guitars a day. That's not a huge number.
Wow, you guys are up to 6 a day?
Yeah. But, still, as Tom said, Tino, who has been buffing all of our guitars for the last 30 years or so, wants to retire at the end of the year. And nobody that we know of, at least, can buff as fast and as good as Tino can. So we were looking at our choices, and we're like, well, we can probably hire 2 or 3 people to do the same job that Tino did. Or we can dip our toes a little bit in, like Tom said, future-proofing the business. And so that's what we decided to do. So what was it, early February? No, actually, February, right? Was it March when the robot arrived finally? Yeah, we worked with a company in Canada to design it. Bob Taylor and his automation engineer, Tyler, over at Taylor Guitars, were pretty instrumental in helping us with this. The robot finally arrived, not too many weeks ago, and now we're programming it. So it's been a fun experience.
That's awesome.
Are you going to name it Tino?
Tino 2.
That was actually one of the ideas, T2. Right? So kind of like a Skynet / Terminator.
Yes.
Reference.
Oh, yeah.
But, and of course Tino. But then I think the winner apparently so far is one of our other employees calls it Jimmy Buffett.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. We approve. That's
awesome.
Great. Well, guys, what a joy it's been talking with you. We're rounding third and we're heading home, and we have one more thing to ask you here. This is called
Would you rather?
This week's Would You Rather is brought to us by our good friend Ty Barnes.
Yes.
It's pretty simple. Yeah, let's just say you have a time machine.
Yes.
And you go back. And you have the opportunity to go back, and you can go to 1957.
Yes.
Or you can go to 1959.
Yes.
If money was no object.
Well, money wouldn't have been an object then, so
then.
let's make it it's the first time that you saw that.
It's the first time
and
that I
fell
saw
in
that.
love with one of them.
With one of them.
But now that money is definitely an object.
Now
when it
that
comes
money
to
is an
these,
object.
You can only afford
would
one.
you choose?
Would you rather have a 1957 Gibson Les Paul Gold Top with the first year PAFs, patent applied fors, pickups?
Yes.
Or would you rather have a 1959 Gibson Les Paul Burst, also with PAFs? Or no, well, let's see. Yeah, 59. That would still be PAFs in there. Yep.
Yeah.
That didn't happen until 61 or so.
Well, that's certainly different.
This is a would you rather.
This is a would you rather.
That's a good start.
It's a good one. Okay, Tony, go ahead, and then we'll check in. We'll go to Marcus, and then we'll go to Tom, and then Rob and myself.
Well, I have to go on the record of saying I've never really been a big fan of gold tops until the finish starts chewing off and they start turning green.
Yeah.
Then for some reason I like those.
Yep.
But if I had to choose between a 57 gold and a 59 burst, 59 all the way.
Okay, because it's the burst, or because
I like the look of a burst. Yes.
Okay.
And yeah.
Now,
and it's also
57. Is that the trapeze?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's basically the same guitar, just one has a gold top. And
Okay, good.
Would the neck shape be different between the two? Is a 57 slimmer than a 59?
That's a good question.
Tom?
58s are the big club necks.
Okay. So 57s were thinner.
57 and 59 are probably not too far off from each other. 60s are the thinnest ones.
Okay. So this is kind of a tough would you rather. They're very comparable.
Yeah, they're comparable.
You like it thin, right, Rob?
Yeah, but not too thin.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So you're saying the burst.
I'm going with the burst. Why not?
Marcus, what's your choice?
I have to admit that I'm not a Les Paul fan at all. So I'm gonna actually do a side question to Tom. Which one of the two is the more expensive one, Tom?
Well, the burst would be worth more now.
Okay, I will go that and immediately sell it.
They'll sell it to buy 5 Tom Anderson guitars.
I don't have to buy those anymore, but
The really good ones.
Yeah.
right.
Okay, Tom.
That's actually an easy one for me because my first Les Paul was a gold top. So I think I'd go gold top.
Yeah. I'm going gold top too because, and this is actually coming out of Chase's. Rob, go ahead. Sorry,
I love when he gives us like an order of stuff and then he's like,
because you were chiming
he can't
in.
wait. He can't wait.
Go ahead.
No, I'm with you and Tom. I'd go gold as well. So,
Okay.
So
All right.
the reason for
I'm
yours.
going gold. Well, I was in Chase Gullett's shop this weekend, and he had one on the bench. It was 70. I'm trying to remember. It was 70, early 70s, and it was gold top. And I said, this looks like really, really, really expensive because of how distressed it was. Like, it was like just one of those ones. If you looked up distressed gold top,
It had the look.
it was 1,000,000% like it couldn't be any better. And I was really impressed. And I said, that's awesome.
Well, what's funny about this is that I've been toying with the idea of ordering another Anderson sometime this year, and either making a Bobcat or a Cobra that I do in a sparkle gold. So
Oh.
similar.
Yes.
Yeah. And both those are shorties, Todd, so they have the Gibson scale in, so that's why,
Yeah.
Well, there we have it, ladies and gentlemen.
The gold tops win.
Gold tops win.
Yeah.
That's right, Todd. At this point of the show, there's a special group of people.
I didn't say anything, Tony. Tony, don't we have something special to do right now?
That's right, Todd. Because at this point of the show, there's a special group of people we love to thank. These are our executive producers. You like how I slammed on that?
Feisty.
Yes. So did everybody else who just earned
Now, you might be wondering, what's an executive producer? Well, I'll tell you. An executive producer helps make this show possible. How do you become one? Head over to patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs. Check out a couple different levels in which you can participate. Become a sponsor, a friend, a hero, if you will, of the podcast. Each level comes with some very nice thank you gifts and opportunities to win great stuff, like a Mike Campbell book signed by Mike Campbell himself.
That's why I'm going to be on
That's all
Patreon.
I'm telling you. Get on there. But in addition to all that great stuff,
Yeah.
there is one thing more. What would that be, Rob?
Get to have your name read on the thing.
Your name read on the thing. Well done, Rob.
Pretty pitchy,
Thank you,
dog.
Tony.
Yeah, I thought you saw you weren't
Your
quite
name
ready
read
for
on
it.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. So special thanks to these executive producers: Anthony Lathrop, Brett Hogarth, Cameron Pappas, Darren Gregory, Don Kloss, Elad Mizrahi, James Bell, James White, John Esterly from Rare Buzzer Effects, John Sebastian, John Halverson. We got a lot of Johns and James, don't we? Justin Jones, Ken Sayers, Michael Senchuk, Mike Davenport, Owen Eads, Pluto. Ralph Gottschalk from Wonderful Audio Technology. What? Richard Kendall, Rick Calhoun, Rusty Sneeden, Stefan Lamb, Tom Barazin, Trevor Ellenberg, Trevor Gunberg, Vader and Pedals, and Ty Barnes.
Yes. Thank you guys so very much.
Thank you. But Todd, there's another group of executive producers.
I knew you were going to say that.
These are our grand poobahs. These are the creme de la creme, the top of the heap, the A number ones, and they wear a fez on their heads during listening to this podcast. It's the law. And if we catch you not wearing the fez,
Do we send them?
we got a special place.
Yeah, we're working.
We got a special place. So special thanks to these grand poobahs: Anthony Gemolero, Billy Spitfire Unlimited, Bob Crouch, Brian Robinson, Cody Foster, David Kaminga, David Tyndall, Enrico Fernando, Fox Hill Studio, Gregory Randall, Hex Matos, John Williams, Martin Cliff, Matt Hart, Michael Van Zant, Michio Murakishi, Mike Nazionale, Moon Guitars, Pedro Vasquez, Sam Jett, Steve Keys, James Pennington, Zach Oswald from Brandon Wow Pickups, and Jonathan Labate from M2 Labs.
All right, everybody. Thank you so very much. We truly, truly appreciate your support. If you're thinking about this, you've heard this 100 times before. Maybe you heard it the first time tonight.
Maybe 400 times.
Yes. We would greatly encourage and welcome your support as well. Yes. Okay, well, let's say a ginormous thank you to our friends from Tom Anderson Guitar Works.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Marcus.
Yes. And let's make sure that we point everybody to the website correctly. So get on over to Anderson Guitar Works and find out all the things that you want, and then give them a call, and then get those things. I'm a born salesman, I'm telling you.
Buy two. Buy two while you can.
Buy two, yeah. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time, your story. It's just been absolutely great talking with you. We've learned so much, and from somebody who knows next to nothing about your guitars, I feel like I really, really know them now. More so than most any other brand that I can really think of, maybe except for Chase Scullets, because he's a friend. But gentlemen, anything else? Tony and Rob, anything else to add to that?
Nope, I'm good. I think we covered.
We got a lot of info.
Yep.
Yeah, we really did. So Tom and Marcus, thank you so much. Any final words?
Oh, thanks for having us. It was fun. Never have done this before.
Really?
Wow.
What?
First podcast. How about that?
Oh, wow. I feel special. This is great. We should in this room. We all feel special. That's anytime you get a first time on the show or just in the guitar pod world. It's kind of like breaking a big story.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like his Girl Friday. Tony,
Todd,
where can people find the things that you do?
head over to pickguardian.com. Check out the stuff that I do. What do? I make custom pick guards for guitars. How do you get one? Shoot me an email. Let me know what you need, what you're trying to do, all the good stuff. I might even have some good ideas for you.
Probably.
Maybe you shouldn't put that TV Jones in the humbucker opening kind of thing. Maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should.
Maybe you should get the kind that go in one.
Maybe you can get the kind that go in one. I got a lot of stuff up in this gray matter up here.
Yes.
It's your opportunity
I think Tony's getting tired.
to make your guitar even more yours.
Yes.
Todd.
Indeed. The medication is wearing off. Rob, go ahead.
Matco amplification. Next.
What do you can do better than that.
I'll offset Tony there.
Yes. If you need your amp fixed, Rob's the guy.
Yeah.
He knows how to fix them. He
Yes, I
uses
do.
soldering irons and everything.
End of story.
I got all the high-tech tools.
Yes.
Screwdrivers,
Yep,
nut
got those
drivers.
Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Hey, you guys can shoot me a DM on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what you dig about the show. Tell us why you think Tony is certifiable. And, ask what Rob's moaning about these days. But we'd love to hear from you. We get a lot of stuff from others, and you should be one of those others. Okay. Something like that. We are definitely getting tired. Thank you so much to Anderson for joining us on the show. It's just been absolutely fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic guitar week and subscribe. Bye.
Todd.
Hang on.
It's always sunny in Columbus.
Check 1, 2, 3. Check 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
I still don't hear myself.
Hang
There
on.
I am.
Jiminy Christmas, you're so bossy.
Well, it's like your first day here.
Yeah. Hey, Marcus. All right. Marcus, I don't know if you've met Tom. Marcus, Tom.
As my wife and I get older, we find out it's become fun to curse occasionally, given the right situation.
Yes.
I actually read a news article the other day that it's actually healthy for you, apparently. So I shared
believe
that with
it.
my wife, but she wasn't buying, really.
I believe it. I'm right there with you. I think it's, not excessively, because then you just sound unintelligent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, a properly placed F-bomb is appropriate.
Indeed. Well, because it wasn't super duper clear.
I know what it is.
You got it? Okay, perfect.
I got it.
All right, man.
Hey, Mike Nacionale, this is no Would
Yeah.
You Rather.
And I love how Tony read that like Anchorman. I'm Tom Burgundy with a question mark.
Tom, Marcus, if your heads are spinning, you're in the right place.
Our quality control department was down today, guys.
Tony, this is when
This
he
is
shows he's
payback.
frustrated.
What?
I didn't choose it. You go. Go ahead. And away we go.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.